Hello, everyone. My name is Miles. I'm a software engineer for the Lego Group, specifically the brick experience. So this is going to be a very colorful presentation. This is the most dark it's going to get. You may know brick experience from Pick a Brick if you've ever bought individual bricks online. But today I'm here to talk to you about the work that we've done over the past 2-3 years on the GraphQL experience on Lego.com. So I'm going to start the background here from when I first joined in 2021. So, picture the scene, middle of the pandemic, and it's absolute chaos. In the beginning on Lego.com, the schema changes to our GraphQL schema, which is powering everything on the website at the moment, was reviewed by a select group of code owners. If you wanted to make a breaking change, you had to ask them for permission, the almighty. And the code was written in a mixture of bits of plain JavaScript, which apparently is in vogue these days, and also Flow. We had, I guess, poor typing, which is going to play a part in this. Yes, the next thing we made that came up was inspecting our schema. So the first developer experience improvement was running these breaking changes automatically instead of asking for someone else to look at them for you. Now that we had all these nice breaking changes not breaking anymore, we can actually do some server upgrades. I think, but this was the first time that we'd actually done a major server patch on our GraphQL server. And the fact that our developer experience and both the test suites were in such a good place, that we could perform this without any downtime, without any major outages. I think it just happened. We pressed the button, no one saw any outages, and we sat back and relaxed. It was fantastic. In early 2022, we achieved type safety. We were able to run both TypeScript and Flow together at the same time. It's very difficult on such a huge code base to upgrade everything over to TypeScript in one go. So this was kind of the best compromise we could get. And this was aided by GraphQL CodeGen, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the last thing I'll talk about is in late 2022, we actually had no more breaking changes. We had implemented the schema checks with the code, with the type checks alongside our business process of getting things changed, and it meant that you couldn't break anymore. I think everyone's more happy for it. At least I am, because it means I'm not called up to say, why is this thing broken it? And there's more coming up later. So the first step on our journey, I told you it'd be colorful. The first step on our journey is schema checks with the GraphQL inspector. So I mentioned the review process was quite clunky, and this was how it was before. So from a reviewer's perspective, a review didn't know what a breaking change was and what it wasn't. So if you removed a field or you changed the type, unless you had studied this GraphQL spec extensively, you didn't know kind of what was going to break or what wasn't going to break. So then we passed that buck over to the code owners. So the code owners were usually a set of engineering managers, up to even directors as well, who knew more about it or knew more about the spec than other people, and were doing a manual review to say, oh, that probably isn't going to break anything. But humans make mistakes. We're not all perfect, and some things would get through. And in terms of CI, we had loads of other checks in place already. You got your unit tests, your integration tests, end-to-end tests, smoke tests. We had no way of checking whether the GraphQL schema was working besides carefully constructed integration tests. I'm going to take a quick side tour, a detour into what introspection is if people watching now aren't particularly familiar with it. So this is the ability to look inside something. And in the GraphQL land, any server can be introspected as long as the security measures allow it to. So it comes back to you as a JSON document, which is then read by something like GraphQL. This is a very old version of GraphQL. But some kind of GUI can read it, and then you can interact with it. So this is how a lot of our developers like to interact with the GraphQL server, rather than writing out, specific queries to test things on. it's nice to just click on a button that says, "I'll put this query in place and put these fields in, and I want to add these input fields." It's just a nicer experience for everyone. So this is where the GraphQL inspector comes in, and I'll kind of show what it ends up looking like. But this is open source software provided by the Guild, and it runs on our GitHub Actions. So we run this on our GitHub Actions to display all the breaking changes, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So the reviewer immediately gets that fast feedback. You've broken this, or you haven't broken this. The code owner, well, they're not needed anymore because we have the computer do it for us. So the jobs aren't being replaced, they're just being upgraded. They get to do more important things that engineering leads and directors have to do rather than review someone's code. So we get an automated check, marks it for safe, little tag on it. Other systems that check whether all of the checks are safe, it looks at that one as well now. And we have some further checks against schemas and are possible, such as linting. So one of the things we have at the LEGO group is a larger GraphQL working group that spans not only our London offices, but also Billund and Copenhagen. And we have loads of engineers working together to come up with rules that the LEGO group wants to use on all our GraphQL servers across multiple websites and internal tools. And now we can start using this ourselves on lego.com. So here's a little example of what the inspector looks like from a developer's point of view. This is obviously made up. I've changed some things to omit for brevity. But we have a nice little breakdown of the PR. We've got 2 safe changes in this one. Well, what's happened? Well, this new type was added, and we've got a new example query description has changed here. And immediately you just know what's happened. Very easy. I was going to talk about TypeScript, but it's cancelled now, so thank you very much. No. We love TypeScript. At least I'm trying to instill a love of TypeScript. I'm forcing everyone to love TypeScript at LEGO Group. We had flow types on the front end, but nothing really internal to GraphQL. So if we were developing resolvers, there was nothing to say your resolver has to return the type that you're actually returning in the schema. And sure, you can find that out through an integration test, but if you don't write that test, it's just a vicious cycle of not doing things correctly. So how can we force it to be correct? In comes the GraphQL code generator, another tool developed by the Guild, which we've taken on and even made some improvements. So you can see that in our little config there, we've got some flow resolver plugins. They were not being updated and they were broken. So we went and fixed them. And we've used the TypeScript ones for both those types. And these are internal types to the server. It's the server code itself. These are typing resolvers for us. And we even went one step further a couple of months back, where we implemented integration test types. So our QA engineers could go and write, take their GraphQL queries they were sending to run their integration tests and get types for those that they could then assert on to make sure that not only were they expecting the right values, but TypeScript could say before they've even run it whether the test is going to run, which has been really fantastic. And we don't stop there. We go not only internal, but external as well. Our front-end code is reliant on our GraphQL server to, well, display lego.com, to display your sets and bricks and all the things you want to buy. So keeping that server as our section of truth, our source of truth, means that we can write TypeScript, get TypeScript types out of it that we can then use on our front end. So we take our queries and our mutations on the front end in our little hooks in React, and we get types of them. And whenever a GraphQL schema change happens, our CI runs the type checks also against the front end. So you can't break even the front end if with a it might not even be a breaking change. It might be a change and you've typed something so tight that it's going to break the front end, or the front end build at the very least. So we have that really fast developer what do you call it? Cycle thing. What's the word? And this is how we do it. Instead of writing just a JSON config, I've got some lovely TypeScript code that actually runs a generate function that the CodeGen package gives us, and we generate it for all of the internal packages in our mono repo. Yeah, just put them in different folders, and then we can use them. So this is a nice little snippet of our element carts stuff. You can see that we have some data coming through, but we now know that an element cart is that particular type. So that was a little rundown of what we've been doing, but what's coming next for Lego.com? Well, we've got lots of big ideas. The first one is migrating from the monolith. There's all sorts of talk these days about federation. I like to call it lowercase f federation. Not going to mention any brand names here, but the idea of separating out your GraphQL servers within different domains. On Lego.com, there's, I think, at least 13 different domains sharing the same GraphQL server with a single schema that is ginormous. I think it's something like 40 different files of a schema. And we should separate those out to make sure that the server itself is more stable, and the cycle that developers have to go through, development cycle, is a lot faster. You don't have to wait for the cart service to have been built and be working for your, payment service to work. They're separate realistically. Another thing we want to do, it's probably blasphemy here, but sometimes GraphQL isn't the best tool to use. When all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So we want to optimize the use of REST versus GraphQL. I think so one of the patterns of one of the holes we've fallen down in our initial structure was taking a REST API and passing it directly through our GraphQL server with no changes. So you're just having it there as an added latency, and it annoys some people, rightly so. So we should be making sure we're using the right tool for the right job. And I think we're going to get some more things on caching later on, but caching improvements. We cache a lot of stuff already, but there are some parts of the schema, things like, let's say, the footer. You can see all this stuff if you go on Lego.com. Little plug there. You can see that our footer doesn't change very often, but sometimes it does when there's a new little promotion going on. So why don't we cache it forever until it changes? These are all little improvements that we can do, and we will be doing over the next few years. So thank you very much. I'm going to let marketing be happy. We're hiring engineers in all levels, associate through to lead engineer, across London offices and also Copenhagen as well. Come work for us. It's good fun. Yes, I'll talk about that later in person. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, Miles.